At the end of yesterday's lie, Luce must return to the Boiling Isles, the portal she had been using to travel to the human realm and discover that she had a doppelganger and that her mother had believed this doppelganger was the real Luce. That portal started to break down. Even though Camilla and Luce helped save V, and the truth was gradually cleared up, there still remained a major tension regarding Luce's future. Camilla honestly commends Luce on how much she's grown since going to the Boiling Isles. And that's nice to see. Luce is a lot more confident and a lot more mature and a lot more grounded than she was before, while not losing her love of the fantastical and the creative. Luce feels the tender closeness that is once more blossoming between them, and she is so amazed by how her mother saved V. So Luce allows herself to get a little too comfortable, and she unintentionally admits that she chose to stay in the Boiling Isles. She was not trapped there by force. She made the decision to stay in this fantastical world rather than return home. This comment completely shifts the tone of the conversation. Camilla is devastated. She's hurt that Luce would leave her like that, and she believes that she has failed as Luce's mother. Camilla feels her child slipping away from her, and she wonders to what extent this is her fault. Stopping Luce from eternally remaining a little kid obsessed with fantasy and ignoring the actual practical reality of the world, while still encouraging Luce's creativity and imagination, is a difficult balance. I don't envy Camilla for having to try and walk that line, and Camilla wonders if she failed, if she ended up pushing Luce away. She wonders what she could have done differently to convince Luce not to leave like that. Luce is really heartbroken that her mother reacts like this, and she tries to reassure Camilla that Luce's decision was not because of Camilla being a bad mother or an unsupportive mother. She respects Camilla, she loves Camilla, and she's so glad Camilla's been there for her. But Earth was simply overall not as fertile an environment for her growth as a person as the Boiling Isles has been. On Earth, she was miserable. She was looked on as weird and eccentric, and she was never really accepted. So she doesn't want to return home, but Camilla is so desperate not to lose her daughter that she makes Luce promise to return home, and Luce agrees. She doesn't agree happily because she doesn't want to make a promise that she can't keep, and she really does not want to spend all her life on Earth, not when there's this whole other world out there where she's found herself much more at home. Although she loves her mother and she enjoys helping out V, she wants to spend more time on the Boiling Isles. So by the end of the episode, she's left contemplating the consequences of having made a promise that she didn't want to make, a promise she didn't really believe in. Could she leave behind Ida and King? Could she leave behind Amity? I don't think so. She has much more of a life in the Boiling Isles than she ever did on Earth. To illustrate this, I believe we should contrast the Owl House against another acclaimed Disney show with heavy mystery elements, that being Gravity Falls. I believe this is a relevant comparison because the two shows have very close links between each other. Dana Terrace, the showrunner of The Owl House, worked on Gravity Falls significantly before starting her own show, and Alex Hirsch, the showrunner of Gravity Falls, has played a significant role in The Owl House, voicing both King and Hootie. So, in case you didn't know, those scenes in Knock Knock Knockin' on Hootie's Door where King is talking to Hootie are just Alex talking to himself, which is kind of funny. But despite the similarities between these shows, the relationships the Owl House considers important are not quite the same as the relationships that Gravity Falls considers important. Both shows place a heavy emphasis on family, but what those families look like is a bit different. Dipper has to choose between staying in Gravity Falls and pursuing his nerdy interests, and staying with his sister and growing up as a normal teenager with her, as the entire show has portrayed Dipper as being at his best when he prioritizes his bond with his sister and his willingness to embrace these ordinary adolescent experiences over his intellectual pursuits. It makes sense that that show ends with him deciding that, oh, I'm going to stay with Mabel, I'm going to grow up with her together, and maybe after I grow up, I can go back to Gravity Falls and work with Grunkle Ford. But the Owl House has centered a lot more of its emotional core in the Boiling Isles itself. The most important relationships in this show seem to be the relationships between the various members of the Owl House, and also the relationship between Luce and Amity. For Luce to go and leave behind all those relationships seems kind of a betrayal of how she has grown and changed throughout the show and really come to embrace those relationships. They've really helped her grow and mature as a person. She might visit her mother on Earth, she loves her mother, and she might visit V there too, but the show has consistently demonstrated that Luce is at her happiest in the Boiling Isles, and I cannot envision a scenario in which she's happy being on Earth. Luce is at her best when she mixes her quixotic weirdness with a grounded sense of selflessness, and she consistently does that much more on the Boiling Isles than she did on Earth. Luce, I'm sure, knows this to an extent. She does not really want to stay on Earth, whatever she might promise her mother. Part of her might believe it's kind of unfair that her mother persuaded her into making that promise, and that's correct in my view. That's not to say I condemn Camilla at all. Her desire to be with Luce and take care of Luce is earnest and sincere. She wants to be a great mother to Luce. She wants to be there as Luce is growing up. And she doesn't want to lose her daughter to this strange, vaguely malevolent fantasy world. All of those concerns are absolutely valid. So I think Luce, loving her mother and knowing a lot of this, really would not want to break that kind of promise to her mother. But I don't see how she could keep that promise. Keeping that promise would keep her from being the happiest, most satisfied version of herself. And the difference between who she was on Earth and who she is in the Boiling Isles is so drastic that I don't think she could ever really turn her back on the Boiling Isles. Not if she wants to be fulfilled. Now, she might have a conversation with Camilla sometime in the future wherein she asks if Camilla really wants her to stay on Earth, and Camilla, knowing how important this is to Luce to be in the Boiling Isles, perhaps after a few more conversations with Luce and a lot of time to process what she's learned about the Boiling Isles, Camilla supports Luce. She wants Luce to be in the Boiling Isles because she knows that's what's best for Luce. I do think a conversation like this could definitely occur in the future of the show, but until a conversation like this does occur, Luce is stuck in a difficult position, forced to choose between her mother, whom she dearly loves, and a world full of people she dearly loves. There are no easy choices for her, and I kind of respect that the show is willing to go there. She regrets making a promise she knows she can't keep to her mother, and she doesn't tell Ida or King about this promise because she doesn't want to break their hearts as much as she knows she's broken Camilla's. It would have been so much easier to give Luce a much tenser relationship with her parents. Think about Marcy in Amphibia or Toph in Avatar, to name two examples y'all are probably familiar with. In both those cases, the kid in question has a difficult home life that they find suffocating, so they want to escape that home life and start a new life of adventure and wonder. And although we might be reticent to allow someone to make those decisions when they're that young, I think we kind of have to endorse those decisions because there's such a difference between the callous, suffocating home life and the wondrous, life-affirming journey of adventure and wonder. But for Luce, it's a little different because she really loves her mother. She is probably frustrated with her mother at some points, like pretty much all teenagers are, but she wants her mother in her life. She loves her mother, and she wants that relationship to stay close. I'm not saying The Owl House is a better show than Avatar or even Amphibia, but I do respect the level of nuance it brings to the conversation about Luce's conundrum concerning her relationship with the human world. There are no easy answers here. There are no simplistic solutions. I suppose Camilla could come live with Luce in the Owl House. That might be fun, but unless that happens, Luce is going to have to make a difficult choice wherein there are no right and easy answers. She wants to keep her promise to Camilla, but she knows she probably can't. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. I can't wait for it to return from hiatus. It's a great show, really thoughtful. And I can't wait to see what they do with the conflict between Luce and Camilla in the future. I'm glad they've given that conflict space to breathe. There are no easy or simple answers here. No one's right and no one's wrong. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It's sure to be coming soon. That I promised you. Thank y'all again. Adios, comrades.